Perfect. And Tom, I will tell you the moment we have one person on the line for you to go ahead and start. So hold on just a moment. They're hearing the welcome message, which is just about 25 seconds long. So we're just leaving our first messages. And Tom, you're good to go.
Hi, I'm Tom Lennard, the moderator for tonight's call, and we're very excited to have you participate in this discussion about college affordability and student debt. The event's being hosted by State Senator Jim Ananich and will feature a panel of experts, including our special guest, Congressman Dan Kildee. We'll discuss some suggested solutions, but we really want to hear tonight some actual stories from you about how the rising debt and increasing higher education costs are impacting your life personally. We'll begin by introducing some of our panelists and taking some of your questions live on the air. If you want to ask a question, simply press 0. It's very important that you just press 0 on your phone, and an operator will be right with you to get your question, make sure we can try to work you into the call. In addition, you can press 0 at any point to provide an email address in case you have to leave the call early or you would like us to follow up with some additional information. Please be conscious of others wanting to be heard and try to keep your question brief and on topic. If you have a question that's not on topic, again, you can hit 0 and get an email address and we can follow up with you afterwards. Or if we run out of time to address your question on the call, we'll do our best to follow up with you afterwards. We're also going to try to ask a couple of short poll questions for everyone participating, and we should be able to announce the results right on the call so we can get some feedback from you. So let's get started with our introductions, and remember, if you have a question or would like to provide your email address at any time, just press 0 on your phone, starting right now, actually, and an operator will be with you shortly. So first, I'd like to introduce State Senator Jim Ananich.
Well, thank you, Tom, and thank you, everyone, for participating tonight. I think we all know that the best way to ensure a strong economy is to have well-educated and trained workers so we compete with everyone in the world. Unfortunately, we've seen out-of-control costs, lack of financial aid, and crushing student debt can really put those opportunities out of reach. We'll hear tonight from some excellent panelists about the efforts that they've been working on, others have been working on to address these concerns. But most importantly, we want to hear from you about your experiences and your ideas. So please feel free to hit 0 to weigh in or submit your question. And thanks again for being on.
Great, thanks a lot. We're actually going to jump right in. Again, you can hit 0 at any point to try to get your question in or leave an email address. But we're going to jump right in with a brief poll question so we can have a better understanding of the priorities for everybody that's on the call tonight. So starting with this poll, it'll be very simple. What is your biggest concern about college affordability? Press 1 if retiring current student debt is your biggest concern. Press 2 for not being able to go to college because of high costs. Press 3 for rising level of tuition, or press 4 for some other concern that you have about college affordability. I'm going to read that back quickly so everybody has a chance to submit their opinion. What is your biggest concern, your personal biggest concern about college affordability? Press 1 for retiring current student debt. Press 2 for not being able to go on to college because of high costs. 3 for rising level of tuition, or 4 for something else. So now we're going to continue with introductions, and we'll announce the results of that poll in just a few minutes. And we'd like to introduce special guest Congressman Dan Kildee, who's been very active on these issues. So Congressman Kildee, can you share a little bit with us tonight?
Well, first of all, thanks for including me in this, and special thanks to my state senator, Jim Ananich, for his leadership on these issues and for asking me to participate. You know, I think one of the things that's important that we all keep in mind is that when we act to support college affordability, make that opportunity, those ladders of opportunity available to more folks, it's not just good for the individuals who benefit directly from education, but it has the effect of lifting our entire society, makes us more productive. So I say that because for anybody who's out there wondering if they ought to take advantage of the various programs that are available, I just think we ought to encourage people to keep in mind that it's good for you, but it's not just for you. It's for you, it's for your family, it's for your community. So we really want to encourage you to take advantage of what's available. One of the issues, of course, that we're dealing with is that more and more of the cost of a college education is now being borne by the student themselves. There has been decreased direct support to universities that underwrite the cost of a college education, decreased direct support to students in the form of Pell Grants and other scholarship programs that directly support college affordability by putting purchasing power in the hand of a student. And more of the cost is being shifted now to those students, which means more and more borrowing. And in fact, student debt has now surpassed total credit card loan debt in this country, over $1 trillion of student debt. So we want to make sure that these programs are available, but they're used in the wisest way. And like the others on this call, we need to continue not only to fight for more rational student loan programs that people understand and that they can take advantage of, but continue to press for more direct support for students and more direct support for universities so that the cost of a college education is borne by all who benefit from it, not just the individual, but also the society that is made better by the fact that we have a more educated populace. There are a few things that I've been working on. Obviously, as a member of the House Budget Committee, trying to get more support for Pell Grants and more direct support for universities is really important. But recently, I also held a couple of forums in my district, one at the University of Michigan Flint and one at Saginaw Valley State University, to make sure that students, parents, prospective students, and even former students who have student loan debt fully understand all the options that are available to them to make sure that they're not paying more than they need to. Often, because of a lack of understanding of how these systems work, and they can be confusing, individuals might actually be paying more than they need to, may benefit from other programs, may benefit from a restructured student loan portfolio. The only way really to make sure that you get it right is to talk to your servicer or talk to a counselor, make sure that you get the information that you need. So having said all that, there are some things that I'm working on I just want to quickly report on. I have introduced, along with Congresswoman Susan Bonamici, a federal Pay It Forward College Affordability Act, which is the sort of the federal version of what our state legislators on this call have introduced at the state level. It would essentially allow states to experiment with the Pay It Forward concept, which simply goes something like this. If you participate in the program, a student has their tuition and support paid directly for them and then agrees that over some period of time, up to 20 years after graduation, up to 5% of their income is used to repay or essentially pay forward for the next group of students the cost of their college. The idea behind that is we need to continue to experiment with ways to open up the doors of universities and colleges to more and more people. Other legislation that we've been working on, I introduced along with Representative Wahlberg from Michigan some reforms to the Coverdell Educational Savings Account Plan, which would allow for individuals to set aside pre-tax savings up to age 22, as opposed to under current law, it's limited to age 18. It would also increase the amount that can be set aside. So basically trying to hit on every possibility. Savings, direct support for students, direct support for universities, lower student loan rates, et cetera. And obviously, and I'll finish with this, last year we in the Congress were able to deal with what would have been a disastrous situation as student loan rates were set to go up to 6.8% for undergraduate student loans. We came up with a fix which I did vote for, but I don't think is anywhere near perfect. It was not an ideal solution, but it kept rates, at least at this time, under 5%. I think we need to go further and come up with a rate structure that's fixed and that puts the federal government in a position where it covers its risk but does not make money on the student loan program. There are a couple of other things that we're working on. I introduced the Student Debt Repayment Fairness Act, which prohibits private borrowers from calling a loan when a cosigner dies, which is unfortunately something that does happen. If the debtor's in good standing and a cosigner passes away, it's not right that that loan is called if the debt is being retired. And also introduced, co-sponsored the Bank on Students Emergency Loan Refinancing Act, which would allow student loan borrowers to refinance their loans at current interest rates and essentially pay for that by making sure that those at the very top of the economic spectrum pay their fair share of taxes, basically applying the so-called Buffett rule. So there's a whole lot going on. Obviously, there's more to do. Today's call, I think, is really an important one, so hopefully we can answer some questions and have a good discussion, and I'm really interested in hearing the individual stories of the people out there. So with that, I'll turn it back.
Thanks, Congressman Kildee. We appreciate all the work that you're doing on this issue. And again, I just remind folks to please hit the 0 if you'd like to either ask a question, or you can leave an email, or even if you just want to share a couple of thoughts about your own experiences to share with the folks, the panel, as Congressman Kildee said, just to get some feedback from you specifically about how the system is working or not working for you. I'll mention the results, interesting results from our first poll question that we had about what your biggest concern is of the folks who are on the call. It's actually really close. The rising level of tuition was 33% of the respondents said that was their biggest concern, but tied at 29% was retiring the current student debt and not even being able to go to college because of the high cost. So folks are concerned about all those issues, and I think those are all really important. Hopefully we can get to a lot of those on the call. Again, please just hit 0 if you would like to leave a message, or leave a email or share a question with us. We really want to make sure we get lots of questions and stories in here tonight. Next, we're going to actually take our first question, and that's going to be from Philip. Philip, are you there with your question?
Yes, hello, this is Philip Myers. Good evening. My concern is reform. I've listened to the items that you have eloquently laid out in front of us. But one of the problems is, and my true belief is, we need reform within higher education. And reform is in the form of economic reform. The analogy I'll use is one of the automotive industry that we're all quite familiar with in southeast Detroit. And because of that, look what Ford Motor Company did to keep itself afloat. It actually hawked the blue oval, if one will recall. In that vein, we need to do same things in higher education. Perhaps we need to reduce numbers of professors within that realm. Perhaps we need to do something to cut salaries, as the automotive industry did. We need to bite the bullet to fix the true problem. The true problem is the cost of education has increased beyond what is affordable. So the only way to do it is to cut the cost of the education itself, and then all these other things will be remedied, or at least there'll be something involved there.
So those are some really good points, Philip. Sure, those are some really good points. And what I'd like to do at this point with Philip's question, and I want to make sure we also get some time for the panelists to get in here too, so maybe we can combine it as sort of an intro and maybe a little bit of feedback on Philip's question. We have Representative David Kniezek, who has done a lot of work in education policy, and I'm sorry, I had some feedback there. And we would love to hear him do a little bit of introduction and maybe some ideas in terms of things that are being tossed around in terms of education reforms and some of the stuff that Philip talked about. So, Representative Kniezek, are you with us there?
I'm here, Tom.
Great, thanks. Yeah, if you just want a brief intro and then maybe follow-up response, that'd be great.
Yeah, we've talked a lot tonight about personal experiences. And for me, I ran for state representative when I was a senior in college, and one of the major reasons why was the cost of attending university. I was very fortunate to have my tuition covered under the GI Bill through my time in the service. But I talk to some of my friends out there now, and they're having to pay $600, $700, $800 out the gate for their student loans. I talked to one of my friends yesterday. She has a $2,200 student loan payment every single month. And part of that, as Philip touched on, and as the congressman touched on, funding is not everything. Money is not everything. I certainly believe that there is a place for some of the reforms that Philip's been talking about. But at the end of the day, I take a step back and I look at how the state of Michigan was funding our universities, say, 40 years ago, back when, a university's operating budget was 75% comprised of state allocations and 25% from tuition. Well, 40 years ago, the folks in Lansing got wise and figured out that they can just keep cutting the funding to the universities, and the universities will then be forced to pass on those costs to the students, to where here we are today in 2014. these numbers have flipped. 75% of the university's budget comes from rising tuition costs. 25% comes from the state. And we've already touched on, students who are graduating with this exorbitant amount of debt. They don't know how they're going to pay for it. And so, Congressman Kildee touched on the pay it forward model he's been working on at the federal level. It was Senator Ananich and I who authored the state level version here to try and make sure that students are able to pursue the course of study that they want to, that they are going to be able to graduate knowing that they don't have to start paying back those loans until they have a job that pays above the federal minimum wage, or pays above the federal poverty line, rather. And again, they're able to make payments based upon a percentage of their income. It protects them from fluctuations in the economy. And I think one of the most powerful things here about this program is no interest on it. The money that you're taking out is the money that you're paying back. And you're not paying it into some bank or into some CEO's pockets. It's going back into the next generation of learners to make sure that they can achieve their goals and their educational dreams as well. So it creates what we're calling here that cycle of success, where you're paying it forward to the next generation. And in my view, it's a tremendous opportunity for Michigan to offer a solution to what we know is a national problem. And I'll end briefly on a veterans piece that I think is very critical here in the state of Michigan as well. We talk about education, and being a veteran myself, I'll tell you one of the things that helped me most transitioning out of my time in Iraq was being able to get into the classroom and again, work on advancing my studies here at home. Unfortunately, here in the state of Michigan, we've got countless stories of veterans who were born and raised here in our state, joined the Navy, joined the Marine Corps, served all over the world, and they're returning to Michigan, and the universities and community colleges are saying, well, we know that you might have been born and raised here, but you've been out of the state for too long, and so we cannot count you under in-state tuition. And in the case of, say, the University of Michigan, you're looking at an additional $40,000 cost before you go ahead and graduate. And so it was myself and another representative who had introduced two amendments to the Michigan Constitution that require guaranteed in-state tuition for veterans here in the state of Michigan. One, that protects the veterans that lived here and served abroad. And then two, I think it sends a very strong message across the country that if you want to bring your skills and your work ethic and your family to what obviously I think is the best state in the country, and we know that we've got some of the best institutions of higher learning here in the state, we want to say that Michigan has open arms and open doors, and we're ready to move forward in honoring our commitment to our veterans. So hopefully I touched on some of the issues, again, that were asked in the previous question, that without question, the state maintains that power of the purse, political science 101. We're able to do some things when it comes to the funding for our universities that make sure that they're trying to adopt the best practices that Philip was talking about. But at the end of the day, we need to make sure that in the absence of additional funding, because again, funding isn't everything, that we're putting forward pragmatic ideas and new ideas like what Congressman Kildee's talking about and Senator Ananich, and certainly what we're going to hear a little bit from Erica Perkins after me. So again, I simply thank everyone for their time, and it truly is an honor to be here with you all tonight.
Thanks a lot, Representative. We appreciate it, and those are some really strong points you made. I just want to remind everybody on the call that if you hit 0, you can share a question if you have a question for the panelists, or even if you just want to have a few comments about your own experience or frustrations, or maybe you have a success story from how college affordability is working. You just want to share that. We really want to have a great discussion. So just hit 0, and you can get right into the call. I want to jump now to another question that we have, and I'm going to ask Sandy from Flint to share her thoughts. Sandy?
My question is, if there is into the percentage and you agree on the percentage rate, at what period will you discuss on furthering the payments back? I mean, my question is, at what percentage will we have to pay them back when that time comes, after you have agreed on a specific rate? Will you have to look in the future and say, okay, we're going to have to raise this to cover the cost, or are we going to keep this at the same rate and maintain the payments?
That's a great point, Sandy, and I think actually some of that has to do with a few of the plans that folks had talked about, but I want to see if Congressman Kildee maybe wants to weigh in a little bit, because I think that there's been some discussion at the federal level about some of the percentages. So, Congressman Kildee, would you like to weigh in on Sandy's question there?
Right. So the reforms that were passed in 2013 resulted in, rather than having a fixed rate prescribed by law, which is what I would have preferred, I supported a 3.4% fixed rate. But what we ended up with, and this was a compromise that, again, we're going to continue to work on, is a rate that is set and tied to 10-year Treasury note rates. So as you take out your loan at a particular rate, your rate is then locked for that loan for that period of time. So as long as you're paying on that note, you're locked in at your rate. Future students, when they take out loans, their rate will be set to whatever the 10-year Treasury note happens to be at that time. The reform that I'm continuing to push for is to get us back to a fixed rate that is uniform and allows students at whatever point of entry in or out to be able to access federal student loan guarantees, federal student loans at a fixed rate. But as it stands right now, as you take out your loan, your rate will be fixed at the rate that you take the loan out at.
Thanks for sharing that. And again, I just want to remind everybody, if you can hit 0 on your phone, we can get a question into the panelists, or even if you just want to share a comment or some thoughts that you have, just hit 0. We'll make sure to work you in right away. We had someone earlier who I'm not sure if they're still on the call, but Shirley from Flint actually had a kind of an important question and comment, and I want to make sure to get Erica in as well, so maybe she can address this as well as an intro. Shirley asked how can we make college more appealing to students? It's discouraging enough that it's so expensive, and then you can't find a job in your field. It's even worse. And so maybe Erica can give us some of the student perspective. I know Representative Kniezek talked a little bit about this, but Erica, would you mind doing kind of an introduction and then addressing that issue? And again, please hit 0 if you'd like to weigh in on any of these topics.
Yeah, definitely. Well, thanks for joining, everyone. My name is Erica Perkins, and I'm in my second year at Lake Superior State University, so I'm actually currently a student, and I'm the president of the Student Association of Michigan. So if you don't know what that is, the Student Association of Michigan was formed in 2007 and is composed of student representation from the public universities in Michigan. Our mission as an organization, I guess you could say, is to advance higher education by empowering current and future students, that goes for traditional and non-traditional students, to advocate on their own behalf for the accessibility, affordability, and quality of the public institutions of higher education in the state of Michigan. A few things that we do include trying to modify university policies to better the quality of higher education for students. So 2 things we worked on last year was how our institutions handle sexual assault crimes and internet censorship. And then we also advocate on behalf of affordability. So last year we were in support of and advocated on behalf of Senate Bill 408, which was the one that would provide a tax credit for students who were paying off their student loans if they stayed in Michigan after they graduated. And then this year we will also be releasing a student debt video, and that's going to include how student debt affects our students in a variety of ways here in Michigan. To answer the question about how we can make college more appealing for students and higher education in general more appealing for students, I think the big thing that frightens everyone is the debt associated with it. I know something that I ran into this past year as a student is hearing about students who have had to actually decide to quit going to school because their debt has become so high that they don't want to continue taking out more loans just because it is just so intimidating. So one thing I think we can do to improve that and get more students wanting to go to school and continue their education is by either providing more incentives, whether it be lowering tuition costs or providing those tax credits. So there's a way to pay off those loans. Something that we learned about last year in the Student Association of Michigan was the Pay It Forward idea, that proposal, and students that I was with at that time, and then when we took it back to our universities, when we shared about it, we were really in support of it. The Pay It Forward initiative was just a very, very cool idea and a very good incentive for students.
Thanks, Erica. I appreciate your feedback there, and you made some really good points. Again, we want to encourage everybody to hit 0 if you'd like to share your comments. We have some additional ones that are lined up. But what I want to jump to now is actually get back to another poll question to get, again, a little bit better feel for the folks that are on the call and what your direct thoughts or perspective has been. And this poll question is going to be, what actions have you taken to express your concern about college affordability? Obviously, from the earlier ones, it seems like a lot of folks have concerns about it. So press 1 if you have contacted an elected official. Press 2 if you've signed a petition. Press 3 if you haven't acted yet but you might be willing to. Or press 4 if you'd rather learn more but not quite ready to get involved. So again, what actions have you taken to express your concerns or to take action about college affordability and student debt? 1 if you've contacted an elected official. 2 if you signed a petition. 3 if you haven't acted yet but you'd be willing to. And 4 if you'd rather learn more but not quite ready to get fully involved. So with that, again, please hit 0. We'll get your comments or questions in. You can also leave emails that way so we can follow up later, or if you have a separate issue that you'd like to follow up on, hitting 0 will help us get the best information for that. So our next question is going to be from Rachel. Rachel had a question for us. Are you still there?
Hi. I was wondering, how is this going to affect the people that are going to community colleges? How is this going to help us?
That's a great question, and that's a really important part of our higher education system. Senator Ananich, would you be interested in touching a little bit about how some of these programs might help with community colleges, or if there's any other issues that haven't been talked about that might be able to address some of the community college concerns?
Yeah, no question about it, because we have to make sure that all post K through 12 education is affordable, whether it's technical school, whether it's community colleges or public and private universities. So the programs that we're speaking of, I think almost universally, would also go into effect for community colleges, because the support that Representative Kniezek mentioned and Congressman Kildee mentioned that the state used to cover for universities is similar to the same situations going on with community colleges. Community colleges have also seen increases, and we need to make sure that people have an opportunity to better their careers or to make decisions about their educational choices based on the field they want to go into, not about whether they can afford the debt or not. So I think all the programs we're talking about would also benefit the individuals at the community college level as well. Very good question, though, because that's extremely important as we're looking at the different work world that we're looking at now than maybe we did 20 or 30 or 40 years ago. Community college education is an extremely important option for people and should be also affordable.
Thanks for sharing that. The poll results were very interesting. We had 50% of the folks, again, this is what actions have you taken to express concern about college affordability, and 50% actually of those who responded had said they haven't acted yet but would be willing to. So lots of room for growth there. And then also there's about 32% that would rather learn more and get a little bit more information about the issues and then be able to weigh in. So we're going to jump to, again, please hit 0 if you'd like to share any comments or if you'd like to ask any questions. We're going to jump into a question from Michelle from Swartz Creek. So we'd love to hear from you. Michelle, do you have a comment or a question that you'd like to share with us?
I have a comment, and I've been reading and listening to all the information coming out currently about the problem, that we're having with these college students, and they're coming out, and I've also witnessed it personally with friends and family, and these kids are coming out of college with such high debt, and they're not able to get the jobs that they were hoping to get, and the colleges didn't necessarily give them the help they needed, and now these kids who are, mid-20s, sometimes a little older, are being forced to move back in with their parents. They don't have the opportunities that we had. When I look at the 1900s, never in history have we advanced so far in so many categories. I mean, really, when you think about it, technology, medically, and just all kinds of ways. We've advanced so far under the leadership of many people who didn't step foot in a college. And I know a ton of people, and you and I both know this, that we know of plenty of people who have had great success with small business, never stepped foot into a college, a lot of them. A lot of people who had on-the-job training, which was far more advantageous than any college degree could ever be in many cases, in many, many cases. And I have just become very concerned that college is just a huge, huge bureaucracy that's just killing the future generation. And it's very frustrating to parents. And I think this is what needs to be more addressed than we need to address how these students will pay for college, but we also need to address the effect and the very negative impact that this is having on our current, students coming out and the future students. How exactly will that be addressed? The fact that it's a huge advantage to have on-the-job training. Many of these occupations do not require a college education, like they're saying it does. I remember in our day and age back in the late 1900s, many of us had great jobs, and we didn't have to have the college. So can somebody say anything encouraging about that for me, please?
Sure.
And for
I think those are some really good points, Michelle, and thank you for taking the time to share that, getting a different perspective on some of the other issues that we're talking about tonight. I wonder if Representative Kniezek would want to weigh in a little bit, because there were some questions in there in terms of on-the-job training or different kind of job training opportunities in addition to more of the traditional colleges, and I know that's something that Representative Kniezek and Senator Ananich, through some of the work that's going on at the state, you might have some opinions on or some thoughts on. So would you want to share something about that?
Yeah, I'll say a couple things. First, the point is very well received, because as much as I believe personally in college being the right thing for me to have done, I know college isn't right for everybody, and I understand that. I don't think we need to force that down everybody's throats. Unfortunately, what we've seen over the last couple of years is a significant cut to programs in the trades, in the building and construction fields, that individuals who, like you're talking about, maybe they don't want to go to college, maybe they want to get that on-the-job training, and these are really good-paying jobs. I know a lot of folks who could go through and get certified in the plumbing field and come out and start making six figures. And so what we've tried to do at the state level, I'm fortunate enough to be a member of the Education Committee, we've been changing up some of the curriculum and the guidelines and the graduation requirements to encourage students to pursue those avenues of employment at a younger age, if that is what they want to pursue. And then secondly, it's backing that up with continuing education opportunities and programs at the community college level that provide additional training and certification for the kids who maybe want to go into being a mechanic or any other number of incredibly honorable and worthwhile jobs as well. I think the interesting thing, though, aside from that, is understanding the changing economy and the demand for the highly skilled and highly technical jobs and the type of demands that places on students in terms of attaining higher education through a university or what have you. If you look at somebody who graduated high school simply, and I'll use my father as an example. When he started on the Dearborn Heights Police Department back in 1980, all he had to have was a college degree. He went through the academy, and he was a police officer. Most police departments nowadays are asking for minimum 2-year degrees or 4-year degrees. And so the demand for that higher education experience, as frustrating as it may be, the demand for that is increasing across the board, whether it's in engineering or whether it's in police and fire protection. And if we look at the numbers, we know that folks who attain that higher degree on average make $17,000 more a year. They are 9% less likely to be unemployed, 16% less likely to live in poverty. And so again, while I think there's a significant value in that higher education, university, community college experience, I'd have to agree with the point that was being made about encouraging kids and supporting kids who maybe want to go into an alternative field and to not demonize that, to support that, and to do everything that we can to make sure that they're able to follow through and achieve their dreams as well.
Thanks, Representative Kniezek. Appreciate that. And just want to remind folks, if you hit 0, we can get your comments and questions into the call. We've had some great questions and discussion, and we want to keep that going. So please hit 0 whenever you have something that you'd like to add. We're going to now take a question from Sue from Flushing, and I want to see if Sue can share with us.
I was just, yes, I am. I was just basically, the costs of college being so expensive, and then they do internships, which many of them don't really do anything for them. And then after they graduate, the universities, it's like you're on your own. You just shelled out $50,000 or more of your money that you got to try to pay back, and now the universities do not help them try to find a job. And if they're not helping, how are they going to get the jobs? I've looked, and many of the jobs require like 5 years experience. You just graduated from college. What experience do you have? It just it was like, I don't know, it's kind of like what happened to me when I graduated from college in 1982. There was no jobs. And went with what you could.
Those are some really good experiences and points, and I think maybe we could have, I know Congressman Kildee has done some local events and obviously spoken with some of the schools and worked on obviously the unemployment issue and trying to get people hired and opportunities. So Congressman Kildee, would you be able to give us a little bit of feedback in terms of Sue's question there?
Sure. I think, the underlying point of her question, which I think is really an important one, is that we obviously need to make college more affordable, make it more accessible. But unless we have an economy that works for everyone, continuing to have a pipeline of workers for jobs that don't exist or jobs that don't pay a wage that's decent enough to be able to afford to pay off some modest student loans and still have a life that that is worthy of the investment that's been made, it's really critical. So from my point of view, there's multiple parts of this set of solutions that we're working on. The student loan piece is an important part of it, but we sort of have to back up to some of the earlier questions have to do with the cost of a college education. And again, I just want to reiterate this point that is really the most important point of all, and that is more and more of the cost of college education is being passed on to students. It's not so much that the overall costs themselves in the aggregate are rising, but the percentage of the cost that is being borne by the student continues to go up. And what's inherently unfair about that is that we all benefit when we have more people who receive a college education, or, as one of the other callers mentioned, other forms of training that might not be a 4-year degree, but might be skilled training that leads immediately to a job in a technical field. If we don't do those things, it's sort of a chicken and egg question. We won't be able to grow the economy. But we've got to have, a minimum wage that makes sure that when people do go to work, they have the kind of resources that support retail establishments that puts money back in to the economy. We have to support manufacturing with trade policy that does not put American goods at a disadvantage against foreign produced goods that are being dumped on our shores. We have to have a banking system that works. We have to have infrastructure, roads and highways and bridges and ports and rail that make our goods and services as competitive as our competitors are across the seas. So there's a lot of moving parts to this. We have to do them all. Getting affordable college education in the hands of more and more people is the fastest way to grow our economy. And that kind of completes the circle. If we're going to have jobs available, it's because we have a productive workforce and innovative workers that are coming out of our schools that have ideas that they can commercialize, that grows the businesses of the next century. the next decade, which puts people to work and creates more opportunity. It's not a zero-sum game. We can grow our economy, but the only way we do it is that we have to invest in our people. That's why college affordability is so important.
Absolutely. Thanks, Congressman Kildee. We are having a great discussion tonight and want to remind people to hit 0. We still have a few minutes left to be able to get in some poll questions and some discussion, and just want folks to hit 0 so we can try to work in as many as possible. We're going to actually go next to Gloria from Flint had some comments that she would like to make, and we'd love to hear from you, Gloria. Gloria, are you still there?
Yes, I am. I guess I had several comments about different things, and one was about administrative costs. Like we have ISDs if they apply for grants, but we also have this administrative fee that's always paid. And if you're doing the same job over and over and over again, it looks like I would think that some of those administrative fees would be able to be passed on to the program to help more students. And a lot of times, we only help a small number of students with grants and things because there's only so much money allotted for that. And I know one of my concerns is that. My other concern is when we were talking about, I know we're not going to move the charter school movement back, but, I mean, their administrative costs are more than public schools, and yet they also score a lot of times a lot lower than our public schools. But somehow we're able to continue to promote them as being the best thing for children when we've had charter schools that have been failing for at least 4 years, and when you question parents about it, well, I didn't know that. Well, your child has been at harm for at least 4 years, and you didn't know that, so that set that child back, a significant amount of time. And
those are some really good. Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
And then we have like ISDs that create third-party entities to do to subcontract services out. And then, it's a matter of lowering pay and not being able to pay into the pension programs for the state for teachers and retirees and different things. So, I mean, there's a lot of things that go on at the bottom level that, we address the top level, college affordability, and, I mean, I understand that. But we also have, for years and years, demonized students that didn't go to school for 4 years. And those people that were able to work with their hands, we made them out as a pariah, that wasn't good enough. When a lot of those people make a lot more money than those people who do acquire 4-year degrees. I mean, I understand that I'm a retired shop worker, and I went to school also and got my degree while I was working. So, I mean, I understand that. And then when we talk about college, a lot of times you take a lot of classes that are not quite relevant to what you're doing, because I used to ask my professors, they'd show us these students in these beautiful classrooms sitting on this carpet. The kids were all behaved, and I asked one professor, I said, well, this is not the real world. So I think it's a disservice when, all of our kids do not live in the suburbs. We don't have all college-educated parents. My parents were not college-educated. And so that's not the real world when you get into these classrooms. And, we've demonized teachers to the point in the class, we've demonized them so much in the news that, a lot of times parents don't have a problem with doing the same thing to them when they approach them in the classes. That disrespect still shows up there. And, I mean, we depend upon teachers to educate our children as really from the cradle to the grave anymore. And so we expect them to wash clothes, to feed them. We expect them to do lots.
Absolutely, Gloria, and you brought up a lot of really great points. What I'm going to try to do is have a couple of our different panelists take different pieces of that, because you brought up some really good issues, and obviously all of these from, even before kindergarten all the way through the public school system and then into the college that we're talking about today, these are all intertwined and important. So I was wondering if Representative Kniezek, being on the Education Committee and having looked at a lot of these different issues, maybe you have a few thoughts to share about Gloria's questions in terms of the K-12 system, and obviously, Senator Ananich is a teacher and might be able to weigh in some as well in terms of some of the things that we're working on to address those issues as well. So Representative Kniezek, did you want to share a few words?
Well, yeah, I can share a couple thoughts, especially as it relates to the K-12 system as a whole. I think my biggest frustration, having spent some time in a 7th grade classroom, I don't know what grade Senator Ananich taught, but I remember one of my biggest frustrations being the legislature seems to constantly be moving the goalposts as relates to the achievement level that we're trying to reach for the students, or the standards that we're setting the students, the standards that we're setting for the teachers themselves. And so what I think anyone is looking for, whether it's students or parents or the teachers themselves, is first and foremost a little bit of consistency. Tell me what the guidelines are. Tell me what you're looking for so I can reach and achieve those goals. And secondly, to the point about charters versus publics, we need to make sure that the standards are the same for everybody across the board. If it's fair, it's fair, and it needs to be that way for everybody. And so, just from the education committee perspective and having been there a bit myself, I say those are some of the biggest challenges. I think something that is a frequent hot topic here in Lansing, and we're actually seeing some significant movement on, maybe not directly related to the issue that we're talking about here, but certainly with tremendous implications within the field of education, is teacher training and the evaluation of our teachers and our administrators. By and large, we have a phenomenal group of teachers here in the state of Michigan. Most, if not all of them, are performing at or above where they're supposed to be. But without question, we know if you go into any field, there's always going to be that 10% is what we called it in the Marine Corps. And so my colleagues and I, over the last couple months, have been developing a plan for teacher evaluation that, in my opinion, is extremely groundbreaking, in that in the past we've saw all these efforts to try and demonize the teachers and to look for punitive actions against our teachers. Nowadays, we're talking about how can we continue to develop those teachers so that they can develop the next generation of even stronger and even smarter students. So we've been moving the ball on that in a very positive direction. And, again, while it may not directly relate to this, I think it's a significant piece of the puzzle as it relates to our education system as a whole, how well we're preparing our students to tackle the challenges of the 21st century economy, be it a 4-year education at the university or going into a trade. And the point you made about not demonizing the trades or not demonizing folks who don't want to go into a 4-year university, I think that was a great point and something that we as legislators, frankly, need to get better at.
All really good points. Senator Annick, did you want to add anything briefly to that response?
I'll be very brief because Representative Kniezia did a very good job and very poignant job of addressing that issue. But I think at the end of the day, what we all want, or we should all be striving for, is a quality education system from pre-K all the way through college, and one that helps empower students to reach the goals that they have. And obviously, from we've heard from folks, there needs to be some reforms. I think we all agree to that. But at the same time, we need to make sure that we give the students the tools that they need, whether they want to graduate from high school and start their own business or go into a company and work. We've talked about some skilled trade legislation that we're working on that would help get people some quick training so they can get into these good-paying jobs, whether they want to go and go to a community college and get an associate's degree or get a certificate in a number of fields so that they can move on and get a better job, or whether they want to go to a traditional university, whether it be public or private, and make sure that university, when they graduate, they have an opportunity for a decent paying job, hopefully in the state of Michigan, and not be crippled with insurmountable debt that is impossible to pay off in many cases, and makes students have to make really tough choices about their life and where they want to live and whether or not they're going to be able to pay these things off. And I think that's the most important thing that we focus on. And as was mentioned, sometimes when things get tough, people jump to demonizing. It's this person's fault. It's that person's fault. I think what we have to do is there's solutions to these problems, and they may be tough, and they may be things that we have to work on and take some time, but there are solutions, and sensible people, hopefully in Washington and Lansing and in our communities across the state, can come up with those solutions that I think work for people. And I think that's what we should all be focusing on.
Great. We're getting towards the end of the call now, so I just want to make sure to remind folks, please hit 0 if you still want to try to work in a couple of comments or share your story or have just a few last-minute questions. But we also want to make sure we get a poll and some additional comments in, so please hit 0 if you can. We're actually going to take another poll now. We're going to ask, what you think specifically. I know Congressman Kildee talked about the economic tie-ins with this particular issue, but what do you think is the biggest threat to our economy? Press 1 for lack of jobs. Press 2 for not enough investment. Press 3 for college affordability. press 4 for consumer debt, and press 5 for low wages. Again, there may be other issues, but of these 5 issues, what do you feel is the biggest threat to our economy currently? That's 1 for lack of jobs, 2 for not enough investment, 3 for college affordability, 4 for consumer debt, and 5 for low wages. We'll try to get the results of that up shortly. So next we're going to go to a question. Again, you can hit 0 at any time in these last few minutes here, but we're going to go to a question from David. David, would you like to share some comments or questions with us?
Yeah, I'm here. Can you hear me?
Great. Yep. Thanks, David, for being on the call.
Okay, yeah. I'm a student at U of M Flint. I'm a sophomore. I have like $10,000 in debt right now, so like that's kind of a big deal, and that's like scary to look at as a student. I was just wondering, is there like anything that I can do to be involved? Like, where do we go to get involved with this kind of stuff? I think it was Erica who is the student association leader. Like, where can I go to get into that?
That's great. Thanks, David. And it's a great start. Just being on the call tonight is a good start to learn more about this and to get involved. But that's a great question. Erica, would you like to share a little bit about how David or other students can plug in?
Yeah, I would definitely encourage you to go to your student government office. Most student governments around the state, they actually have an external affairs chair, and they have people who kind of handle this kind of issue and advocate on behalf of students. Flint is actually a part of the Student Association of Michigan, and they have student involvement in that organization. So if you wanted to get a part of the Student Association of Michigan, you definitely could. I would say your best bet for a starting place would definitely be your student government office.
Great. Thanks, Erica, and thanks, David, for taking the time to be on the call with us tonight. I want to share the responses from our poll earlier. It's interesting. The lack of jobs is what folks said. 39% of folks said that lack of jobs is the biggest threat to the economy. 29% said consumer debt, which is credit and auto and all that. And then 23% said low wages is a big threat to the economy. So all these issues are really intertwined. But again, there's a lot of economic threats that we need to be concerned about. We're getting towards the end of the call here, so again, we encourage folks to please weigh in, but also try to keep your questions, and for the panelists, try to keep the responses short so we can try to work in a few more before we have to close. You can hit 0 still. We'll try to work in a couple more. And right now I'd like to go to Barbara from Flint, who had something she would like to share with the group. Barbara, are you there?
Yes. Hello?
Barbara, are you still with us?
Yes, I am.
Yep, Barbara, you're on the line.
I just have a couple of concerns that I have a 21-year-old daughter who's just started community college at Mott, and she's a single parent. Basically, what I'm concerned about is when she does get done, how is she going to afford to pay it back? And then, when she gets older, I have a 10-year-old right behind her. When she gets older, how much debt is she going to incur when she starts into college?
These are really, really good concerns and really good points, and hopefully some of the ideas that we're talking about, some of the reforms here, will be able to be addressed to help your family. I want to see if Congressman Kildee has a couple of comments about that, having heard probably many of these stories with the efforts about college affordability that you've been doing in the district and at the national level.
Well, I appreciate the call, and I think it points out that these are real stories about real people. This is not some abstract question. To make sure that the young woman who's in college now can afford to repay her debt, number one, it would help if Congress would act to further lower student loan interest rates and come up with a fixed rate scenario that makes sure that the investment makes sense, but that the federal government is not actually making money on student loan debt, which I think is the right policy for us to take. That's going to be a difficult hill to climb, but I think that's an important one. But also, the best way to make sure that that your daughter can repay her loan is to make sure that there's a good job waiting for her with a decent wage, so that we don't have students graduating from college and making a minimum wage or something just above the minimum wage that doesn't really pay the bills. And unfortunately, we do see that right now, that the economy is tilted more and more toward a few at the very top, and real wages continue to go down. We need to make sure that we have an economy that guarantees that if you work hard, play by the rules, go to school, that there's a job waiting for you that gives you a decent living, And you can do more than just pay off your student loans. You can buy a house, and then you can help the next generation through college or through community college or through an apprenticeship program or directly into the workplace. For your 10-year-old, I mean, I think we've got time to get it right in terms of the policy. And that's why I think the commitment of Representative Kniezek and Senator Ananich is so important, because I know they're both fighting to make sure that direct state support for our colleges and universities increases and goes back to the level that it was, so that the cost that when that 10-year-old is 18, the full cost of a college education will be borne by all who benefit from her going to college. She benefits, but you benefit, your neighbors benefit, the community itself benefits, and because we all benefit, that's why historically we have had so much more of the cost of college being borne by us all through our state government support and through direct federal government support. We need to get back to that, because bottom line is we don't have to choose between growing our economy by making important investments and being able to support college education and balance our federal and state budgets. The only way we balance our federal and state budgets is if we have a workforce that's highly productive and is not depending on its government for direct support, but actually contributing to a strong and vibrant community by being the best they can be. And the only way to do that, make sure that that happens, is to make sure that whatever kind of education, whether it's workforce training, an apprenticeship program, a 2-year college program, or a 4-year degree, or even something beyond that, is affordable. And that's why we need to take this very seriously.
Thanks again, Congress Goody. We're getting really close to the end of the call. We're going to try to work in one more question and then one more poll, and be able to give a chance for our speakers to make some closing statements or some ways that you can follow up after this. Crystal from Flint, would you like to share your comment or question for the panel with us tonight?
Yes.
Crystal? Great.
Yes.
Thanks for joining us, Crystal.
My concern was not only it seems like do you pay the tuition costs, but you'll end up having lab fees, administration fees, technology fees, and all these type of fees end up adding onto your tuition. And then another thought that I have too is seems like my daughter will apply for the student loan, and then not only for the student loan, that doesn't end up paying for her full semester, so then she's trying to get anywhere from $2,000 to $4,000 out of her pocket again just to cover that semester that she's trying to pay for. And then I'm just worried for her that when she is graduating in another couple of years that she's going to have so much student loan debt that I'm wondering she's probably just going to have to move back home and try to get that paid off.
That's a similar story that I think we're hearing from a lot of families, and so thank you, Crystal, for taking the time to participate tonight and all the support and help that you're trying to find for your daughter. So, Senator Ananich, do you have a brief comment or maybe some thoughts in terms of Crystal's situation and some of how these fees keep kind of piling up and adding up and the strain that it puts on families? Do you want to share something briefly with us?
Yeah, there's no question about it, and the result, as Crystal mentioned, is a lot of folks end up moving home. Or they end up moving out of state because they can make more money in a bigger city quite often, sometimes in Chicago, LA, Atlanta, Denver, all places like that. And that should be an option for people, of course, but it should not be a necessity that they have to move away from their family and from their home in order to get the higher paying job to pay off debt. That should be a decision they make because that's something that's good for them. Well, one of the things that I think was brought up, I think Representative Kniezek mentioned it, when it comes to the burden that we're putting on the state, the burden that the state is covering, and it has shrunk dramatically, and more of that's going on to the colleges. And one of the ways that the colleges have done that is increasing tuition, but at the same time they're also increasing fees, because fees don't count as a tuition increase, even though those fees are required to be paid. So I think what we're hearing time and time again is that there definitely needs to be some serious discussion about this and some serious action. And we can't wait on it. These issues are too important, and we're putting so many students and parents in such a predicament that they're having to make choices that aren't about what's in the best interest of the student, and maybe more in the best interest of how to pay something off. And that should never be the decision people have to make. It should be based on the best interest of the student for their educational and for their life going forward. So I think those are really important points, and we need to really address those issues sooner rather than later.
Thanks. It's been a really good discussion. I hope everybody who participated was able to get some good information for them. We're going to go ahead and we're going to do one more poll question now, and we're going to come into closing statements so everybody can let folks know, how they can follow up if they have any closing thoughts. But the last poll question that we're going to try right now is, now that we've heard a lot of these different options and ideas and different issues that are going on, what should lawmakers make the top priority as far as college affordability? What should they really try to invest their energy into? Press 1 if you think the increased financial aid is a top priority. Press 2 if greater investment in higher ed. Press 3 if increased aid to reduce debt. And press 4 if keeping tuition low should be the priority. So again, with the lawmakers, all these different issues and topics that they're trying to focus on, what should be the top priority with regard to this issue? 1 for increased financial aid, 2 for greater investment in higher education, 3 for increased aid to reduce the debt that's already outstanding, and 4 for keeping tuition low for everyone. So I'm going to go ahead and start with closing statements for our panelists. Thank you so much for being on. If you can just share a few last thoughts and maybe a website or some other way for the participants on the call to be able to follow up. And I'd like to actually start with Erica, if you could start out with us with your closing statement.
Yeah, well, I just, again, want to thank everyone for coming on to this call to discuss higher education funding. Obviously, it is a very big concern for a lot of people, and I personally believe that the cost of education shouldn't be so high that it prevents students from actually continuing their education. It's almost a tragedy even. But if you're a student on this call, or you have a student who is in college and is facing a lot of student loan debt, I would really encourage you to go to the Student Association of Michigan website. It's mistudents.org, mistudents.org, and you can reach my email. And if you have a particular issue that you would like the Student Association of Michigan to advocate for or really push for this coming year, please let me know. You can also email me at president@mistudents.org.
Thanks, Erica. Thanks for sharing that. Wanted to let folks know from the last question, the poll question that we had a whopping 60% of the folks said that keeping tuition low should be the lawmakers' top priority for college. So all the elected officials on the phone have your orders now. We should focus on that as well as a lot of these other issues that are going on. So Representative Kniezek, would you be willing to share some closing thoughts with us and maybe a way to follow up with you as well?
Yeah, not a problem. I mean, the easiest way, obviously, to find myself or Senator, just me, I guess, would be house.mi.gov. All of the representatives are listed there. I'm the representative for the 11th District, very easy to find. My closing thoughts, I probably would go back to a previous question from a young man named David, asking about where can he get engaged and how can he get engaged. I am so surprised since taking office, the number of folks who feel like there is a wall between them and their legislators, and that if they reach out, they won't get a response or they won't have their voices heard. Now, I'm not going to say that every legislator has the same approach, but I know for a fact that folks like myself and Senator Ananich and Congressman Kildee, if you pick up the phone and call, we want to make sure that we get back in touch with you one way or the other. And, if one person calls my office, the issue's on my radar. If I get 2 calls, 3 calls, if I'm getting 15 calls on an issue, the pressure is pretty high. And the folks in the district are really turning up the heat on me and forcing me to pay attention to an issue. And I think what's so important about that, especially with the conversations we're having here today, we've heard from a number of legislators, we've heard from Erica, we've got the ideas out there already. We know what we can be doing in order to make Michigan a more friendly state as it relates to our colleges and our university and increasing affordability for everyone. What we need are legislators who are willing to listen to the people. And so I encourage folks to get engaged and to reach out to the legislators and put the pressure on those folks who aren't like-minded, such as the folks on this call who want to see the reforms, who want to see tuition kept low. If you engage those legislators, if you put the pressure on them, you got to remember at the end of the day, you are our boss, and we are supposed to be responsive to you. So if you engage and you do so for the issues that we all care about so passionately, then we're going to be able to see motion and movement on these very critical issues. So, again, my office and my phone are always open and always ready to talk. If you've got a question, give me a jingle, and I just really appreciate the opportunity to be with everyone tonight.
Thanks again. Thanks for participating. And Congressman Kildee, could you please share some additional thoughts for the folks on the call?
Sure. First, if anybody wants to contact us, the best way is to go to our website, and it's dankildee.house.gov, and there's plenty of ways to get your thoughts or ask a question or give us some input. Yeah, I think the bottom line of this call and the basic message is that we've got a lot of work to do to make sure that our governmental policies when it comes to higher education align with our values, and that we're smart about how we make the decisions, the investment decisions for our future. Because we know one thing for sure, that the only way that we get state budgets and federal budgets in balance is to grow the economy. The only way we grow our economy is invest in the skills of our workforce. And if we do that with greater support for higher education, more direct support for universities, more Pell Grants, lower student loan rates, less of the cost of college being passed on to students, more people will take advantage of those programs. It'll grow the economy, and when we have economic growth, we pay the government back for the investment that they've made in our people. And to me, it's just a matter of making sure that our policies align with our values. And I think if we take this on, we will make the right choices. And I'm happy to support Senator Ananich, Representative Kniezek, and others that are willing to stand with us on this.
Thanks again. And Senator Ananich, would you like to finish up the call for us tonight?
Yeah, I just want to first thank everyone for calling in and expressing whether you asked a question or made a statement or just listened. Your input is extremely important. Hopefully you thought the poll questions were valuable. And I want to thank all the panelists, Erica for providing her experience as a student who's in school now and the challenges she's facing, Representative Kniezek and Congressman Kildee for their insight and all the hard work that they're doing every day on these issues. And as Congressman Kildee said and Representative Kniezek said, please reach out to us and to others and make sure that your voices are heard. It's our job to hear from you and to act in the best interests for our constituents. And I think making sure that we have a system that's affordable and to make sure that parents and students and graduates have an opportunity to get a decent paying job and make a life for themselves, that's what our responsibility is, and we should all be working towards that. And I really appreciate all the comments. And Tom, thank you for moderating. I think this was a really, really valuable discussion. And again, I just really appreciate everyone's input. Thank you.
Thanks again. And just a reminder that for Senator Ananich's website, it's Ananich, ANANICH.SenateDems.com. Would love to get you on the email list or find more information about all the different projects that he's working on. And thanks for the discussion tonight, everyone. We really appreciate it. It's super important issues, and your participation is really valuable. So thanks again, and have a great night.